Um, this is our August session of the Housing Strategies Peer Exchange. And today we're going to be talking about funding strategies. So we'll go through some quick introductions and announcements, and then we'll get into our main topic with our two speakers, and then we'll have time at the end for Q&A. Feel free to think of your questions as we go through. You can add them to the chat, and then we'll also be able to do some raising hands and things toward the end. And so we do have our fall schedule pretty well set for the next few months. So our next session on September 18th will be on fast track implementation. And then we'll go into affordability and displacement mitigation strategies in October. November, we're still working out the details. And then in December, we're going to do another session of the speed networking like we did last year. Just a fun, quick little get to know you types of activities. All right, so we have a lot of announcements right now. So there is, we have quite a few funding opportunities available through DOLA. So the ADU grant program is accepting applications now through August 29th. We also have the new child care planning grant program. This is for local governments to provide, to promote the development of childcare. There's going to be, that will open, applications are available through September 29th. And you should schedule a pre-application meeting. Details are in the chat. There's also a link to the program. Robin, do you want to talk about the local planning capacity grant?
Yeah, just a quick announcement that we recently published new revised program guidelines. So a few things are newly eligible under the LPC Local Planning Capacity Grant Program, including comprehensive plan updates, comprehensive land use code updates, and what we call preliminary planning and analysis, such as developing preliminary site plans or doing property conditions assessments, that kind of early planning work on a specific housing development. We had a webinar last week, which the recording is now posted, and the grant application opens this Friday. Please schedule a pre-application meeting. The deadline is September 22nd. That's all.
Great, thank you. We also have another round of the Housing Planning Grant Program. Applications will open Friday, November 7th, and there will be an information session for that on Thursday, November 13th. So add that to your calendar. And then there's also, CHFA is doing a webinar for Drive at Home. This is $50 million in new CHFA issued bonds to support development of affordable housing, for sale housing, and we'll include some general program details, implementation timeline, and also opportunities for Q&A. So there's a link for that to register as well. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So for those of you who may be new to this series, this is a monthly series we do on the third Thursday of every month to discuss housing strategies for affordable housing throughout Colorado. We always invite a couple of communities to present on what they're doing and share their experiences. So this month we are talking about effective local financing strategies for affordable housing. And we are fortunate to have Susanna Lopez Baker, the Executive Director of the Boulder County Housing Authority, and Scott Moulton, who is the Executive Director of the Estes Park Housing Authority. And Scott, let's go ahead and get started with you. If you want to go ahead and share your screen. and then we'll have Susanna present.
Certainly.
Let me stop mine.
Can everyone see it okay?
Scott, we're not seeing the full screen mode. It would be better if you're able to full screen. Perfect. Yes. Or you were there a moment ago.
Technology is wonderful.
Isn't it?
All right. And as a reminder, please feel free to add any comments. We'll go through those for Q&A as well. And we also do have the Q&A enabled if you prefer to use that.
Scott, that's perfect. I think we just
Is
want to
that
go back
what
to
we
the...
want? All right.
Yeah, you're good. First slide.
Well, thank you all for having me this morning. And I know this can be a very complicated topic. So from Estes Park's perspective, I'm really just going to focus on two main new funding sources that we were able to bring to bear in the last few years. And I'm going to run through this relatively quickly, really focused on, excuse me, the local impact that our two funding sources have had in a relatively short time period. Again, understanding and recognizing first off that this is a very complicated topic, which can go many different directions. So I look forward to running through this presentation quickly and then getting to questions at the end as well. So feel free to ask any questions when we get to that stage about any aspect that I may not cover. So really Estes Park, a small mountain-ish community. Our proximity to the Front Range is why I kind of temper that a little bit. But we had two recent opportunities to bring direct funding to the housing landscape. And the first one in 2022 was the Vacation Home Workforce Regulatory Linkage Fee. We don't use an acronym for that, and you can see why. But essentially a fee that was levied on short-term rentals in the town of Estes Park only, not unincorporated Larimer County, that started around $1,400 and in 2025 was, I think, $1,550 or so for any short-term rental license holder. And that was done and levied by the town of Estes Park after they completed a fee study or a linkage fee study indicating that there was in fact an impact to local workforce housing via the existence of short-term rentals. It was difficult during that study to really ascertain some of the finer details of the actual impact because the market is relatively small, population is small, so the data sets had a wide range of error potential. But ultimately, the town of Estes Park, via that study, was able to show a direct impact and link and apply a fee to license holders for licensure in 2023 and beyond. I'll explain a little bit more of how we use that fee going forward. And then the significant one was through the enabling legislation was HB 2211-17, which allowed for the expansion or repurposing of pillow tax, essentially. So if you come to our jurisdiction and spend a night in a hotel, we now had the option to either increase that or repurpose the existing 2% to affect change via this funding mechanism for workforce childcare or workforce housing initiatives. So those were the two opportunities that we really grabbed hold of. As I mentioned, the vacation linkage fee was established in 2022, effective fees in 2023. The study did show some calculated impacts, which allowed that fee to take place. As I mentioned, the original fee was $1,390 per STR, no difference in bedroom count or size. And then 2025, there was an inflationary mechanism in the original language that allows this to increase as is appropriate. So 2025's fees were $1,460 per license holder, and the town is responsible for collecting those. Total collections from this funding source, combined years of 23 and 24, was just shy of 1.5 million, and in 2025, that's increased, one, because of the inflationary mechanism, but also a small increase in licenses, mostly or all in commercial areas in Estes. Moving to the big one, the lodging tax. Again, the enabling legislation was HB 221117. This started obviously with that enabling legislation, and our community and Visit Estes Park, which had a 2% lodging tax prior to this, of course, all of that being dedicated to their use to market our destination, was initially hesitant to try to tackle this in any way, shape, or form. And whatever changed their viewpoint on that, I am certainly grateful that they did. They played a critical role in helping establish and run the community task force to evaluate the potential impacts of imposing or increasing the lodging tax that already existed, what would be the appropriate increase, all of those factors that go into these decisions. So as a task force of, I think it was about 18 local folks spanning a wide range, EPHA participated in that, but really off to the side. And then one of our board members was a member of the task force. And so that task force, through all the work they did, they ultimately proposed a 3.5% increase in funding dedicated to workforce housing and childcare. Locally, it was a very well-attended vote, and it passed by 62.6%, which in my mind was really a mandate level vote that the community recognizes that we needed to bring solutions to bear for housing and childcare. And I think it was evidenced in these numbers. I will also say that Visit Estes Park, being the marketing gurus that they were, came up with a tagline, which was a little bit controversial, but that it served us well. And the tagline was "the tax that you don't pay," simply meaning that the local population primarily wouldn't be saddled with this tax. It would be those visitors that visit us throughout the summer months and have such a large impact on our need for the local workforce and, of course, our housing needs as well. The funding flow is a little bit complicated, but ultimately it runs through the state statutorily, then through Visit Estes Park. Visit Estes Park and the town of Estes Park signed an MOU that VEP is essentially a pass-through of those funds. And then EPHA, the Estes Park Housing Authority, signed an MOU with the town to receive the housing portion of those funds. And then each year we go through a process of splitting those funds between childcare and housing. With the first 2 years, housing received 80%, childcare received 20%. And the next 2 years, so 25 and 26, we're looking at first 2 years were 88-12. The 25 and 26 is 80-20. And I really let childcare drive that split. I think we all understand housing could use every dollar. It's expensive to either repurpose or build ground up development for workforce or affordable housing. So I really defer to the childcare space. What do you all believe you need? And then I'll take whatever's left over. So really moving quickly to the impact that it's had locally. Through June of 25, we've collected a little over $10 million just for the housing portion alone. Annually, the entire tax collects about $5.5 million. We have committed funds through various programs or purchases or new housing opportunities of nearly $9.7 million. So as you can see, we have not wasted any time putting these funds to use, and their existence has really allowed us to capture opportunities that simply wouldn't have existed if we didn't have this funding source available. I really want to highlight on this, being able to be bold, take the step, create a ballot initiative, put it out there, let our local populace decide if this is something they think is appropriate, and will they trust those in charge to bring real solutions to bear. And the impact that can have is profound. And really, I look at 6E or the short-term rental linkage fee funds as seed money, right? It's gap funding. It allows us to show local participation it allows us to leverage those local funds in a pretty significant manner. And of the $6.2 million roughly that we've allocated to new purchases or new units, that's a leverage value of nearly $50 million just in 24 months, essentially. And it also allowed us to receive a Prop 123 equity investment into a conversion project called Fall River Village, which again, without these sources of funding, simply wouldn't have been an option or available to us. So in really 24 months, we've been able to bring 109 workforce units to market. We've land banked just shy of 14 acres. I'm sure several of you on the call may laugh at my minimum of 36 units in 14 acres. As I'm sure some of you on the call, we have pretty strict zoning regulations in Estes, and our density allowance is very, very low, and that works against us quite a bit. But I felt it appropriate because of that to put in that even at 14 acres, I'm only looking at 36 units unless I go after other tools that may be available to increase that density. And we were also able to preserve 16 units with this funding as well, which preservation is obviously a key tactic that we can't lose what we have, especially when we need more housing. The other impacts that I haven't really touched on, it allowed us to staff up and do all the work that I promised this organization would be able to do. We've rolled out several programs, a workforce rental assistance program. We're getting ready to go live with a equity shared down payment assistance program as well. And again, pre-development for ground up development is difficult to fund and find that money. And it can be a little risky. This local source of funding allows us to go through pre-development processes, mitigating some of that risk, and certainly having that funding available is huge. And again, it shows us that we have local contributions when we go out for grants or other awards, that we have quote unquote skin in the game locally to affect change both in the childcare and the housing space. And ultimately, it's a very powerful tool, having a local source of funding and giving us that local flexibility of how we deploy those funds and the control that comes with that, to really make sure that we're removing as many of the strings as we possibly can and affecting or bringing solutions to market that have the highest value impact on our community. So that's just a quick run through of our two main funding sources that have come about in the last couple of years and the significant impact they've had. I look forward to Susanna's presentation and questions later on.
Great. Thank you so much, Scott. So next we'll have Susanna Lopez Baker from Boulder County. If you want to go ahead and start sharing your screen. And just a reminder, we do please add questions to the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll get to those at the end. Thanks.
Good morning. Can everybody see my slides?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, good. I can't see anybody, and that's like the weirdest thing to me. So if I'm missing some cue, Lisa, just tell me.
You got it.
Nice to meet you. Susanna Lopez Baker here with Boulder County. And in Boulder County, I actually serve in two roles. So yes, I'm the executive director of the Housing Authority, but our housing tax and our tax work is actually done out of our housing department. And I'm the director of the housing department as well. So two different entities under one department. So I'm taking hats on and off all the time. But that's just a one kind of weird thing that I thought I'd throw out there, because the tax was run from Boulder County. We called it the Affordable and Attainable Housing Tax. At the time, it was 1B, but there's a new 1B. So we just call it AAHT. You'll see that acronym throughout. Not going to read the ballot language to you, but I do want to leave it on the screen while I kind of talk through sort of what prompted us and how we got here. The work for Boulder County really started in 2017, and I see a lot of familiar names on our list from Boulder County. I'm glad that some of our planners are on here. I saw Lisa and Phil and Holly and MJ. So excited that you're here. But this work started in 2017. And essentially a group came together and formed called the Regional Housing Partnership. And that partnership still does work today. Love the work that they do. But essentially they set a goal to have 12% of units across Boulder County be affordable by 2035. And the way that they knew that they needed funding to get there, so they started an ad campaign called Home Wanted, and they really pushed it out. They were really on track to get something on a ballot sooner, but then COVID happened, followed quickly by a very large fire. So things kind of were delayed. But in 2023, our county commissioners did come together and say, okay, now's the time. Let's put it on. As you can see in the bold print, there's a lot of uses for it, but primarily the goal was going to be to develop new units and preserve existing units. The rollout was town halls throughout this sort of fall session before the ballot went live in November. But that's what commissioners did. They held several town halls, got a lot of information out, and it was passed overwhelmingly by the community at a 73% passing in favor. So that was so exciting. Lots of people worked really hard on that for many, many years. And so we shifted into now what? Okay, we have a tax. So we spent the next year, 2024, doing a lot of engagement, hearing feedback. We were coming off of the hills of ARPA community engagement. And so we had a lot of data and we knew housing was important to the community. So we were really using that data and leveraging it. So we didn't have to do a really extensive rollout and really were focused on the implementation pieces. So this tax, although passed in 2023, the funds were not available until 2025. And this was an existing sales and use tax. So we recycled it. And for the next 15 years, it will generate about $16 to $17 million a year. So it was a nice tie-in. It wasn't a new tax. Essentially, we were just asking the voters to continue this tax. But the Regional Housing Partnership is made up of all of the jurisdictions and municipalities in Boulder County. And then we also work really closely with some of our other housing partners, which the Family Resource Centers do a lot of supportive work, especially around rental assistance and financial coaching for families and individuals. Also, our public housing authorities were very involved in the process. They are members of the RHP. And then also the habitats were involved, as well as Together Colorado and ECHO, which are groups that do a lot of advocacy work for people around housing. So we engaged with a lot of different groups in 2024, got a lot of feedback. And in 2025, we're really ready to start putting together our criteria and our eligibility. And so that's what we have done. And the focus really, again, around our ballot language was around development of units. And so that was the main focus. The commissioners did want to support some housing supports, preservation, prevention in particular. We know, you all know, if we can keep people housed, then they will be more successful. And so if we let somebody fall into homelessness, we know it's likely 5 years before they will exit. So that's where we really wanted to put our service dollars when it comes to the affordable and attainable housing tax. But the goals were develop new units. And so here pictured is Willoughby Corner. And today, here's a shameless plug, is our grand opening and ribbon cutting ceremony of 192 units. AHT this year contributed over $1 million to finish out this project. It is a $114 million project because of the extensive infrastructure that we had to do. It's a senior project. It's a multifamily project, separate community rooms. So just a really large scale project. Couldn't be more proud. And we are so excited to celebrate later today. So another big goal was preserving those existing properties, as I've talked about. Our housing authority in particular, we have quite a bit of aging units. We were several housing authorities merged together once upon a time to build the Boulder County Housing Authority. So this year we were able to do several big projects in Louisville, primarily, and some work in Lafayette and also Longmont with some of these funds. So here are the numbers. I know that people are very curious about that. So our revenue projection this year is $16.7 million. Boulder County has a fund balance reserve in which we're required to maintain for future years. That does go down as the fund is levels out. So $835,000 for that. We do have an administrative allocation. And one of the cool things, and I'll talk about more in a minute, was an innovation fund. So we have a set aside for that. And then that really moves us into how the commissioners wanted to split the funds was 35% going to supportive services work of some kind, which primarily, like, as I talked about, was prevention work. And I'll get into some of the details of that in a bit. And then 65% of that going to the capital development. So that broke down by a population-based fund distribution between the three largest jurisdictions that do development. So Boulder County, City of Boulder, and the City of Longmont. It kind of worked out to be like a third, a third, a third. So everybody roughly got about $3 million. And so we are just now completing those IGAs. I think we'll have our first signed IGAs with City of Boulder and Lafayette in the next week or so. We're so close. And then how these projects are picked and how the funding is decided is all done through an advisory committee, which is made up of the city and town managers, as well as our county administrator. So it's a small team. They meet just twice a year. They have the different managers present projects in their communities that they really want to see funded through these funds. They put together a recommendation and they take that to the county commissioners in our normal budget sessions, which start in September. So we are very close to getting all of our 2026 numbers out the door so the commissioners can allocate those funds. And this year, since this is our first year, the timelines were weird, but starting next year, all those funds will be available in January. Wanted to talk a little bit about supportive services. Essentially, the breakdown of those funds came out to about $5.2 million. And of those $5.2 million, 2.9 is in rental assistance. So more than half going out the door for rental assistance. But aside from that, we have case management. We started a housing navigation and helpline. We know that when people are losing their housing, this is probably the worst time of their life, and they often don't know what to do. And they might be scrambling. So what we thought was if we can intervene early on, that gives us the best chance to keep those individuals or families housed. So we have a housing helpline, which takes those calls and is able to push them in the right direction so that they're not wasting time calling the wrong group or the wrong organization or filling out the wrong application. So we have a robust team. In just 6 months, we fielded over 2,000 calls, and that is statewide. We get calls from everybody, but we're tracking that data and we'll be able to make adjustments next year in terms of resource building for future years. So we're excited about that, being able to track that data. The other big change that we saw or that we wanted to do was we know people who have vouchers, voucher holders. Sometimes things get chaotic for them, and we wanted to make sure that they were not losing their vouchers because that ultimately would mean they would lose their housing. And so we have expanded our navigation services to all voucher holders across Boulder County, despite where they get their voucher from, whether it's our housing authority or the other housing authorities in Boulder County or another organization that issues vouchers. And so we provide case management to all of the voucher holders across Boulder County now. So that's really exciting for us too. We were able to leverage some funds for mediation and eviction prevention, so that we're intervening if things do go to the court system. We're able to pull cases off the docket and help fund that way as well. And with the voucher assistance, not only does it come with case management, but we do have funds available to help families who, even if they're on a voucher, may have fallen behind on rent or may need other financial supports. So we do have funding available for those families as well. Largely our supportive service work really does model what was usage is all in plan. So we were able to participate in the all in plan when Denver was awarded in 2024. And then the last fund, the $500,000 innovation fund, this was really important to our commissioners to really start addressing race equity and some barriers that we have seen in housing. Many of us feel like we can't do a lot of race equity work in housing because of the Fair Housing Act. So this would allow pilot programs to do that. And so we are now working with a group out of California who has done an innovation fund already. And so they're helping us build that criteria so that nonprofit providers who work with communities, particularly communities of color, can start seeking funding from this fund. So almost there with that one too. Okay, but where we are now in terms of our implementation process, this year we did meet with each jurisdiction. We did interviews, we met with their staff, we understood what their needs were. We did create criteria for the tax and how it would be awarded. The commissioners have committed to 2 years with no changes so that next year it goes a lot smoother, but they do reserve the right to make changes. And so intergovernmental agreements are currently being signed. Innovation Fund, we're working on that. And we're still soliciting feedback from the community. So we have a live feedback form where we are regularly checking just if people have questions. Our next step would be in the fourth quarter to unleash some data that we do have, what projects were implemented. Boulder County, for example, across the jurisdictions that we represent, we're able to fund 7 different projects, which is really exciting, from Lyons to Lafayette, Willoughby Corner being a big one of that. So exciting about that. City of Boulder has found 2 projects that they're going to fund with their allocation, and the City of Longmont as well. So a total of 11 projects being funded this year with our AAHT dollars. And that is all I have. So looking forward to questions.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. All right, so I don't see any in the Q&A yet, but we do have one in the chat. And this is for Scott. But maybe Susanna, if this is something that you could talk to as well. Does any of your preservation work include mobile home parks? And if so, what does that look like? And you say no.
It does not. We no longer have any in Estes, but rather ironically, the large property we were able to repurpose from short-term rentals this year, 89 units, used to house about 15, 20 years ago, the one and only mobile home park in Estes. So while we don't have those any longer, we were ultimately able to repurpose what was put in their place into a similar use.
And we do, yes, our tax is, our mobile home parks are eligible, and we have funded mobile home park work. In fact, one of the 7 projects that we're doing is a mobile home. Boulder County purchased a mobile home actually using ARPA dollars in Lyons. And so AEHT is going to fund all the civil work to see what's possible for redevelopment. And it's a Lyons property. So we're really excited about that. But yes, we have across Boulder County, there are over 3,000 mobile home units. And so very, very important for us to continue to support that community, many of which are in Lafayette. And we did help create a resident-owned community there with ARPA dollars as well. So great question.
Great, thank you. And then I know we have some questions in the chat, but Erin Ganser has raised her hand. So if you'd like to unmute, please feel free to ask your question.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Sweet. Hey, Susanna, could you, I'm sorry if I missed this, explain the funding source behind the Innovation Fund? Is that sales tax? Where does that come from?
Correct. So it's all local sales tax dollars. So this was a tax, it's a part of the larger AHT that brings in the $16.7 million on an annual basis. But that was a recycled sales tax. And so we carved out $500,000 to go towards an innovation fund where our nonprofit providers can be engaged with some of the social service end of the work that they do.
Great, thank you. All right, and we have a question from Marjo Kurgas. Scott, have you seen any pushback from tourism or the lodging sector with the decline we are seeing in mountain communities?
Yeah, really good question. Thanks for asking. I think we saw pushback, as I mentioned, the tagline that VEP created, the tax that you don't pay. There's certainly a segment of our business and specifically lodging community that doesn't agree with that tagline. And we have begun to experience a little bit of pushback against it now that it's been in place, in light of recent small declines. I think some other markets are experiencing larger declines than we are. But yes, we do see a little bit of pushback. We have conversations about what the impact is, or what we believe the impact is on those that seek to stay and experience our community.
And I'll just jump into that too, Scott. Boulder County is actually seeing our sales revenue down as well. As so what was projected to be 16.7 may be closer to 16. And so we're seeing that, and our expectation for next year will be that it will be flat as well.
Great. Question from April Long for Susanna. How did you land on the goal of 12% of Boulder housing being affordable to the workforce?
That is a really great question. And Lisa or Phil or Holly, they sit on RHP with me. I don't know why they chose 12%, nor do I know why they chose by 2035. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. But if anybody else on the call can, please feel free.
Holly might be our best bet. I don't recall the rationale, or maybe Phil, maybe you do.
No, sorry, team. I think a lot of our team members in that group came on board kind of after that decision was made, but it's really been kind of a North Star for not only the staff, but city council as well. And so it's something that's regularly mentioned in our meetings and so on.
How does that 12% relate to your housing needs for the county? Do you have any sense of how those numbers kind of work together?
That's a really good question. And I don't know exactly. And every town has a different goal within that 12%. So a great example is City of Boulder actually bumped theirs to 15% because their needs were greater than that of others. And so they met their needs. So we do have a dashboard where we're tracking all of our new housing and sort of where we're at. And we're a little over halfway there, and we have until 2035. So we're making good progress. And that's what this group does. So that's kind of how we're shifting with the Regional Housing Partnership is how do we better track the pipeline, and are we trending in the right direction? What's missing? And so those are the things that we're currently working on.
Great. Scott, how does your program how is that working to meet Estes Park's housing needs? Is that going to be enough, or will there be more funding needed from other sources?
There will most definitely be the need for more funding. Even right now, housing proportionately is receiving about 4.1 to 4.6 million annually. And we're in pre-development phases for 2 new ground up developments, and we're looking at a cost per door of right around 600 to 650,000 to produce a single unit. So you can do the math there that 4 million annually doesn't go all that far. So we're going to still be having to play in all the traditional funding areas, whether that's LIHTC or other sources, and try to use these local sources as the gap funding for some of that.
Great.
We have the same approach to Lisa in Boulder County. I mean, just in unincorporated Boulder County, or all the jurisdictions that we represent, the projects for 2026 total over $7 million, and our allocation is 3.6. So we know that there's more need than we have dollars, but same thing. We just really want to leverage these dollars. And we have, even on the social services side, where we've, although we have $5.2 million total, we have already bought in over $2.5 million in leveraged grant dollars. So we're excited about that.
And we do have a couple questions in the chat. We've got Nicole asking, we're a statutory versus home rule town. We invested in a Nexus study and increased our short-term rental annual fees. Any other success stories we could apply with the statutory caps we have to comply with?
And if there are other communities out there who would like to share your success stories, please feel free to raise your hands and do that as well. I'd like to hear from everybody.
But Scott or Susanna, any comment on other success stories when there are statutory caps involved? I don't know if that applies to either of your jurisdictions. I'm guessing not.
No, I unfortunately don't have anything to add on that question.
All right. Well, if anyone else in the audience does, please chime in. And then otherwise, we could go to Christopher's question for Scott. Is the short-term rental linkage fee an annual fee or a one-time for new STRs?
It is an annual fee, so it's collected annually upon license renewal. So the town collects that annually. And I didn't go into details in light of time, but seeing that it looks like we're doing okay on time. You know, Suzanne and I, we've talked about leveraging these funds, and it's certainly not enough. I want to talk about Fall River Village for a moment. It was a 89 unit, essentially townhome style or small apartment style development that was used for short-term rentals. Had a newly built in 2018 event center on site. So it served a wedding segment of our tourism base here. And we had the opportunity to purchase that property at $35 million. And it took some financial wrangling to make that happen. Without these funds, we couldn't have pulled it off. And really what it required was not only the lodging tax funds and an ongoing contribution, but also I was able to secure the linkage fee from STRs to the project. So I used the 2 years that were already collected but not used as an equity investment into the purchase of the property. And then knowing that the rents that we needed to be able to hit, the debt couldn't be serviced with the rents that we needed to hit. So we ultimately have to sell about 14 of the nicer units of this project to buy down the debt to make it pencil long-term. And during that gap period, which I estimate to be about 3 to 4 years, there's about a $700,000 gap. And we're using the STR linkage fee to make up that anticipated gap while we work to sell those units on the open market to buy down the debt more. So it shows, you know, that without these funds, we couldn't have provided that opportunity to our community. And it took not only a very willing lender to help us through that process, but then it took up 2 additional sources of local funding, plus the Proposition 123 equity investment of $7 million to pull off that purchase.
I actually have a question for you both. Since these are taxes that you had to put to the voters to get approved, what kind of pushback did you have from your communities and how did you overcome it?
I'll take that real quick, Susanna, if you want first. And then, so our task force in Really Visit Estes Park did a phenomenal job of providing reasoning to the community, the importance of the funds. That tagline, again, the tax you don't pay, I think was a significant portion of it, whether you believed in that line or not. And it really allowed us to get the voting base. I was impressed by Susanna's 72%. I felt good about 63%. But honestly, we're seeing more pushback now that we're in the 3rd year of collections, even with everything we've brought to bear to market and the solutions. The sentiment in the community is that we're not hitting the affordability targets that they had in mind when they voted yes for it. And so really it's an ongoing public relations task to highlight how difficult it is to provide, you know, 60% AMI or below, the tools that are available. And where we have been able to fill gaps, that need is there. And we need the units first before we can inject additional affordability. So for us, we were really successful on the front end. A lot of work went into it, a lot of community engagement. But it's really after the fact, now that it's in place, that we're seeing more pushback and questions about how it's being used and its true effect in the housing space.
Yeah, I'm really going to echo what you said, Scott. We're kind of going through the same thing. So getting when we went live with the tax, it was August of 2023. And so we didn't have a ton of time. But I think because the community, one, they can see and feel it. Housing in Boulder County is incredibly expensive. And so it's not everybody, there was no we don't believe you. I mean, everybody knows. So that was good. And I think we've been talking about it since 2017, that RHP work, having all the jurisdictions sign on to it in support. I think that went really well. And then I think really in true transparency, the same thing that Scott described, the pushback that we got was how we spend the dollars. And so there was a lot of groups that came out and said, hey, we really have to support the 30% AMIs. That's really difficult. And so it just doesn't work with the rest of the structure. And so doing a lot of education around that is something that we're doing now on the back end. But that was maybe a little bit surprising to me. I think the other thing that we heard was this tax does not allow for any homelessness work. So no dollars can go to support any homelessness work, which the commissioners have decided includes PSH work. And so that's, permanent supportive housing is a big need and it's an expensive need. And so I know that that's a pain point for a lot of people across the county. And so some of those things is what we heard after the implementation pieces, but not during the tax. It was very supported. Again, 73% was overwhelming support. So we were thrilled. But yeah, it's been a bit of a challenge during the implementation year for sure.
I have
That's
a
great. Thank
sort of question request for everyone on the call. We know when we were preparing this session that there are dozens of great examples across the state of Colorado. There's what's happening down in La Plata County and Durango. There's, a lot of stuff happening up in the mountain communities like Eagle and Garfield County. If some of you could share maybe just briefly whether your community has some kind of a local funding source program, maybe real briefly what it is, like drop it in the chat, and if you would be willing for others to reach out to you, maybe kind of who to contact. So that might be helpful. We usually try to wrap up at about 9:55 so that if folks need to run to other meetings, but we do have another 5 minutes or so. So please bring in your questions in the chat or raise your hand. And then lastly, I just wanted to note that the Local Planning Capacity Grant Program, we have several grantees where a part of the project we funded is exploring this. So once you get to the stage of it being a ballot measure or, something that's going before voters, we can't be involved in any election, grant funds can't touch any election related activities, as you probably are not surprised to learn. But we can help you with the early planning stages of what might that look like, or do a study or something that helps you contemplate what a local funding source program might be. So contemplate that for the grant program. So we do have a couple other things, not seeing questions, but I did see that there was a question from Rebecca in Larimer. So if there are no other specific questions, you could go ahead and ask that at this time, Rebecca. Great, we just saw Montrose shared what they passed. Salida shared. If Rebecca's still around, feel free to ask your question, Rebecca.
Hi, thank you. Sorry to switch gears here, but Robin, I appreciated you pointing out that there were some changes in the program guidelines for the Local Planning Capacity Grant Program. So I was looking through those, and I see that comp plans and land use code updates got in there, added in there with a required 50% match. And my question was, if we received the $50,000 incentive for the Prop 123 fast track implementation, can that $50,000 be used for comp plan or land use code updates? And is there still a 50% match, or does it drop to a $0 match for those?
Essentially it's zero, but most comprehensive plan updates probably cost more than 50,000. Maybe the land use code update would be less. I've heard small communities can be, maybe in the ballpark of 40 to 50,000 for that work. So we assume that we're probably still only covering a portion of your total costs, but we're just going to have no match on the grant agreement budget line item.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Flexible options. All right. Any other questions on this funding topic? Local funding strategies that can be paired with all the other state and federal.
Yeah, I saw that City of Montrose has passed a lodging tax increase last year from 0.9% to 6%. So that's great. And that's Christopher Ottinger. And so he's added his email to the chat if you'd like to contact him. And Amy Swiatek, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, Grand County passed a lodging tax for a variety of community priorities. So great to see that other things are coming through. City of Durango, Brian Devine, most of our housing fund is accumulated from fees in lieu, providing deed restricted units. We do have a small discretionary section of our lodgers tax that can be used for housing. And then Amy has actually asked, is anyone doing impact investing with these dollars? Be interested to hear if anybody's trying impact investing to finance affordable housing.
It's a strategy that we remain open to, and I've had a number of conversations with some potential investors along these lines. So short answer is no, not directly yet. But knowing that this is essentially seed money for us, that we have to seek other sources, this is one avenue and angle that I've pursued. Just not to success yet.
Oh, and Sue shares that the NOCO Foundation is looking at impact investing in Northern Colorado.
Maybe we'll have to do a future session on that. Community foundations can be a part of that strategy. Yeah.
We are hearing about a lot of private foundations that are interested in really supporting affordable housing work in a variety of different ways. So it's certainly worth reaching out to them. I know the Colorado Health Foundation's doing that. There are a bunch. So reach out to your foundation folks and ask. Grand Foundation is doing impact investing and housing. Yampa Valley Community Foundation, to name a couple. Thank you, Amy, for sharing that.
And Telluride, Shirley Diaz shares, has had a tax for a long time, and you can reach out to James Van Hooser for the details on that in Telluride. That does. Oh, sorry. Someone was gonna.
Susanna?
Nope.
Okay.
All right. Well, that does take us to 9:55, and so we do want to be mindful of everybody's time this morning. Thank you very much to our speakers, Scott and Susanna. We appreciate your time with us this morning. And we will be posting the video from this morning as well as the slides probably early next week, and we'll send an email out with some with the links for that.
And
thank you very much. We will see you next month, September 18th, for Fast Track. And thank you all very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Lisa.
thanks,
you.
everyone.